The next presentation is by Ray Ann Baker, Donna Gerdts, and Marlene Tummy. Ray will be presenting, and Donna and Marlene is they're going to be here for questions if you have them. So go ahead, Ray Ann. It's a pleasure to have you here. The presentation on Goat Eagle, Learning Linguistics Through a Legacy Story.
Great, thank you. I native siem nasiya hail uit na squalwen quanis I lamnala atana quail. Good. Oh, I said good morning, but that's okay. Good afternoon. I'm happy to see you all here today. Today, we're going to talk about learning linguistics through a legacy story, particularly ts'usqun, which is Golden Eagle by Wilfred Sampson. And I'm presenting this work on behalf of Hul'q'umi'num Language Academy. And I will share more about who that is. So Hul'q'umi'num is a dialect of Island Hul'q'umi'num, or it's a dialect of Hul'q'umi'num, which is a Salish language spoken on the west coast of North America. There you can see in the yellow. And Island Hul'q'umi'num is one of 3 dialects. It is spoken from metalanguage in the south to Nanoose in the north. The Hul'q'umi'num Language Academy consists of undergraduates and graduate students at the Simon Fraser University community-based BA and MA in linguistics program cohorts, which is located here in Duncan, British Columbia. The primary goal of the students is to gain fluency in Hul'q'umi'num and literacy. The program includes immersive language learning. As language specialists and material developers, the students develop a thorough knowledge of language structure, embrace the metalanguage and analytical techniques of linguistics, and assist in the processes involved. There is intergenerational use of language. As pictured here, we have sadly, we lost our ts'usqun Ruby Stitamont, Dr. Ruby Peter, this January. But here she's pictured with her daughter, her granddaughter, and her great-granddaughter, who are all a part of our program. The language is anchored in its socio-cultural setting through the study of important cognitive domains, such as classifiers, colors, kin terms, flora, fauna, place names, music. As you can see here, weaving, that's my friend Evangeline Guerin with our elder, learning how to weave. The coursework involves all core linguistic areas: phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics. The content is in and on Hul'q'umi'num. Data are approached from the bottom up, presenting structures of Hul'q'umi'num designed to encourage students to develop an eye and ear for patterns and a grasp of concepts. The students work with elders to develop skills in transcription, translation, elicitation, and analysis. We can see in this picture our elder Florence James with one of our MA graduates, Claudia Sylvester. Rather than doing a practical field methods course, we adapted our needs for the work that's being presented today. There was a large group of 16 to 18 participants, and they ranged from new learners to fluent speakers. We have a lot of classic documentation already available and ready for our students, and our transcription skills greatly vary. So our alternative approach was to take these legacy stories and aim to provide resources for studying morphology, syntax, and semantics, as well as narrative and discourse structure, prosodics, and pragmatics. One methodology that we've both found successful is for the entire class to focus on one long story over the course of a term. And we did this with ts'usqun, Golden Eagle. It's a 45-minute story that is 960 lines, 123 pages of line-by-line transcription with Hul'q'umi'num in English. The story was recorded on August 5th, 1977 by Tom Hikari and Dolores Louis as a part of a linguistics training at the University of Victoria, and was transcribed and translated later by Ruby and Donna Gerdts. So pictured here is our late elder Ruby Peter and her sister Dolores Louis. In 2018, there were 16 MA students and 2 PhD students that worked on this story, and they gave it a proofread. They laid out the story schema and episode guide. Oh, sorry. I'll just acknowledge my peers here from the first MA graduation. Wilfred Sampson's ts'usqun story. So this was the result of their work in the 2018 MA program. They had broken it down from the opening of Wilfred speaking himself for the first few lines, and then we get to the body of the story, which includes lines 7 to 11 on orientation, the complication action or buildup from line 287 to 1362 when he became a shaman. I won't review, we have so much that I won't review everything, and maybe I'll start moving a little faster. More complications and buildup, and as a result, there was a resolution, there was a precursor and lead up, and a climax, denouement, epilogue, moral, and finally the closing. So we looked at this at many angles. One of them, this is Cara Louie from the 2018 program, and she had a look at the in-view and out-of-view determiners, figuring out the frequency. In 2019, we had 7 BA students and 7 MA students collectively put the story into Elan. We developed a glossary and created a reference tracking table for the entities of the story. And pictured here is the, this was for a different class, our theater class, but it's the best picture we have all together. So this is just a snippet of the work in Elan. And here is a picture of the glossary that we had made, and you can see our initials on the side. So we, again, work in Google Sheets so that we can work collaboratively. My friend Evangeline Guerin and I, and our friend Luke, worked on the discourse demonstratives, prodeterminers, deictic articles, and spatio-temporal demonstratives. There's a list of 62 determiners that we found, and their various pronunciations made it possible to count occurrences. And here's a picture we went through and highlighted the in view and out of view. And here it is again. I won't go into detail for time reasons, but the texts show you the structures that you might not think of in elicitation. So specifically this ts'utni, it may not be elicited at all, but it can be found in stories, and we can learn in stories how we can use this person marker. And again, here it is, the masculine plural prodeterminer, ts'utne'as. So in 2020, here we are in 2021, and there are BA students in the semantics course centered entirely around the story, looking at the tense and aspect, plurals and pluractionality, particles, speaker's knowledge, attitude, and judgment, the meanings and functions of lexical suffixes. This one story thoroughly studied approach. This one story through this study, you can approach it in various ways. You develop a familiarity with the story, with its structure and with its lexicon, and you give contextualization to the data in the presentation. The repeated study allows us to go beyond the regular challenges that we face, and the overall outcome is a deep appreciation for the storyteller's virtuosity and a desire to become a better storytellers ourselves. We hope that conveying our results in our communities will help other learners understand and appreciate this beautiful story. And the review of the story is done on many planes, such as sentence structure, intonation, rhetorical structure, and it reinforces linguistics training, but also shows how the levels interface in a practical way using Hul'q'umi'num. Working from a single story gives us a wide variety of choices about what we're going to focus on, and everybody can really pick what their strengths are and what their interests are. Some choose morphology, some choose syntax, some choose semantics, some work on discourse, narrative structure, and the cultural aspects. It's all very interesting. So this was set in a time when the people lived off the land. So one of the things that one of our fellow students here from the 2018 program, Mandy Jones, did was she had a look at the map, and she actually used this to map out what she imagined in her head this 45-minute story would look like if we could watch it. And then Margaret Seymour, another of the 2018 participants, had a look at the verbs of motion. Samaya Jardeh, looked at ait and kal, which is good and bad. And that was so interesting at all of the different variations of good and bad that are found in the story. Harvey George looked at temporal expressions, and Laura Antoine looked at the meanings. And we see in this amazing story the themes of friendship, caring, helpfulness, and value of companionship, holding sacred the sno'ayach of the connectedness of nature and humanity. All these are positive aspects. That's a quote directly from Laura's paper. On the other hand, the equally important message here, the power of good and evil, and in our First Nations culture, the good medicine overcomes the bad medicine. So in conclusion, by working collectively on one long story, we learn so much from each other. And it's something that, as you can see, we've done again and again with the story. We've learned different methodologies and research. We've learned how to organize data, and we've learned that through explaining to each other. Focusing on one aspect of the story allowed us in-depth research, while at the same time, we grew familiar with the story as a whole. We started the work by listening to the whole story together, and we finished by once again listening together. Every time we do this, the understanding and the appreciation just keeps growing. And it looks like I sped right through that. I got nervous. So I would like to thank our funders, HAITSAP, to Simon Fraser University, First Peoples Cultural Council, and Canadian Heritage, and the Social Sciences and Human Research Council of Canada for supporting our work. Yeah, I probably went through that faster than I needed to, and I apologize. Maybe that, yeah, thank you all. Maybe you have some questions and I can look back at specific slides as I move through too fast.
Well, thank you, Rayanne. Yeah, we have lots of time for questions. So if anyone has a list, I see you have a question.
Yes, very interesting talk. Thank you. I'm very interested to see how one story can be unpacked in so many different ways and for so many different purposes. So this was lovely. I'm teaching a discourse analysis course this semester, and so of course I'm thinking about that. And when you mentioned examining the rhetoric, it got me thinking, what did you guys find about the rhetoric in a story? And did you extend that to looking at norms of storytelling, how stories are actually used in cultural communication or teaching?
Yeah, so I can take that, Brianne, Donna here. So we also had a narrative and discourse structure course above and beyond our field methods course with this one story. And then different pairs or individuals took one or more stories that they did a lot of research on, using the methods that they had learned working on the one story together. And so we replicated a lot of our results based on the one speaker with a variety of other stories, old and new. The oldest stories we have are from 1963 that were recorded with a 103-year-old gentleman. And so we feel we have a look at the real pre-contact style of story. And then we see features of that maintained throughout the storytelling community. We look almost exclusively at things in terms of oral paragraphs. That's the most useful way that we analyze things. And we also have noticed individual styles that some people have. They may have a certain catchphrase that comes up a lot, or a certain way of starting each paragraph, or using a lot of a certain evidential particle or such. What we find the most interesting is looking at different genres, so including conversations and interviews and children's stories, and a more action adventure story like this one, that the different genres really come through with different kinds of rhetorical structure and different kinds of organizations in them. We also have a large collection of speeches, ceremonial speeches, and they also have their own style. So we find that we just kind of scratch the surface. There's so much more to do, but we find that working from the stories touches the heart in a way that just elicited example sentences doesn't seem to.
Any other questions? There is a hand raised. Yeah, go ahead and ask your question. I cannot see the name for it.
Might be me.
Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
So this is just lovely. It ties real close to something we've observed, is that when learners try to speak, and try to put everything they say together from scratch, word by word, it tends to come out awkward and Englishly. But if they learn from stories really, really thoroughly, and then just try to sort of say, well, I know I want to say something, and I know they've heard them say this in a story, let me just adapt that to say what I want to say, it comes out a lot more comfortably and sort of tends to fit the patterns of the language on all levels, not just like the grammar and all that, but literally, but also like the rhetoric and everything. That the more people like learn to understand what has already been said in the language, before they try to like say everything that English makes them want to say, it just makes them feel more at home in the language because they're working with that. So that story-based approach, it's like stories give you endless everything. It's wonderful.
Thank you for that observation. One of the things, if you heard the other talk previously in the day, if you take sentences in isolation, like are the hallmark of like a TPR approach to language teaching, commands and such, they have a very different structure, sound, and grammar to them than the oral paragraph style. And so we really do like to think of the stories as a counterbalance to that sort of everyday language that many of the classes focus on. Marlene, maybe you'd like to speak to that and the immersion kids.
Yeah, I've been teaching grade 1 immersion and taking the Hul'q'umi'num storybooks and teaching them from that, and they've really been doing pretty good listening to the stories, and they can understand first person or male and female. They're learning from when I read them the stories. I ask them or ta for female and male, and they're beginning to understand, and they're 6 years old, so they're going to be the Hul'q'umi'num champions when they grow up. Some of them speak just Hul'q'umi'num in class. Some of them are continually struggling, but I think grade 2, it'll be another aspect of learning from stories and pictures without the written language, so that it can be taught in that manner of how they're not following along with language that was already taught before in like fairy tales and stuff. So they need to have new stories that spoke with their own language and their own new stories. So I'm going to be trying to make that with pictures and their speaking and learning how to make adjectives out of I and good, adding on to that to make it another word such as good for. So it was learning from ts'usqun helps tear the words apart and teach it in a new manner without understanding each and every mythology of creating a Hul'q'umi'num word from the elders that taught us prior to becoming teachers.
So this particular round of working on this story, we did it with text that had no interlinear glossing, but we've set a goal for ourselves that for the next round, we want to do it without any English as well. That's where we're aiming. Nancy, I see you're there.
Yes, I am. Oops.
Nancy is teaching the semantic class that we mentioned. She might have a comment on our method.
Well, I can certainly say that I'm learning a lot through this method. We, for class activities, we pick a particular topic like, evidential particles or tense aspect marking and search the story. Each, it's so long that each of the 5 or 6 students has their own passage within the story where they can pick out the details of just that passage. And then we bring the groups together and we can compare and get a good idea of how each particle works and how to use it. And it's really enjoyable. And I think it really works well.
Sheila Nicholas, you have a question?
Yes, thank you for this. This is really a great model project. I was wondering if I noticed that there's an answer if this was being done virtually or online, and the answer was that it will be. So I just wanted, that was my question. I don't know if you have any more to add to that.
We went 1 year ago, we had to go virtual. Before that, it was all in person. And we're looking forward to the, being together in the room again. It's been difficult, but we're just starting the next certificate program. We've got 70 new students that are starting next month. And in part, we have so many because they have no transportation issues right now due to the Zoom delivery. And
are you finding, what are your current challenges and how are you addressing them then, since this is the first time you've done this online?
Well, let's see who's there. Sharon, you're there. Do you want to speak to the challenges of doing it on Zoom? I mean, the initial challenge was the bad Wi-Fi in many of the reserves. And then we had to scramble to get good equipment for them, iPads for the elders. So the cost of it, illness itself, but who else is here? You know, I think it's going okay. We find that with more, if there's ever more than about 12, it becomes difficult to do things interactively. And then we have to shift to more of a one person talking at a time mode. But overall, Zoom's been good. We found the biggest challenge was the theater program. They found that they couldn't really sing together because of the lag in the internet. But you know, we keep just doing the best we can with the equipment and funding that we have.
Scully, for your presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. You know, we start stories right away with our incoming students. We have some very, very short ones that are intended to be memorized. And we find just laying down some memory work of some children like stories sets in the student's mind things like the verb for structure and the intonation especially. And it lays things down in a way that doing things from paper just doesn't work the same. So we found, you know, we really love our stories.
Any other questions, comments? We still have a couple of minutes.
Oh, I'm Sharon, one of the students. One of the hardest things is not being able to work together. With our little class, it was always helpful to, you know, show each other notes and talk about things that we're stuck on. Like on Zoom, it's not the same. You can't really get the feeling of being in the same room together, I guess. But it's pretty good. And the other thing is when our elder is with us and she is speaking, it's sometimes hard to, like, I really like to look at her lips and how she's moving when she's speaking. And it is with the Zoom, if you don't lock the screen on the one specific speaker and then her screen disappears and somebody else pops up. So that's just one of the downfalls. But other than that, Zoom's been great keeping us in the classroom together.
So my hands go up to Sharon and her fellow students. One student is finishing this term with our brand new degree that just went into place in January, just in the nick of time. But they'll be the first 6 students that have done their whole academic program in Hul'q'umi'num, except for a class in First Nation Studies, a class in ethnobotany, and a writing English class. Otherwise, the entire curriculum has all been in Hul'q'umi'num. So it's taken 4 years, but this is all possible due to the teaching team of the elders and linguists and the master students helping as well, PhD students, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. But we're all looking forward to August, and hopefully we can have a big party in person.
Thank you.